Welcome. This meeting of the Centennial School Board is called to order at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. And a quorum is present. Hello and welcome, everyone. Um, Real quick, there's a few notes on the agenda. It's been distributed in your board pack, and there are a few amendments that we need to make. Under old business 7.1.2, we're pushing that back one more meeting. And we've got a new 7.1.2. We're looking to entertain a motion on virtual versus in-person meetings. And that will be our new 7.1.2. We also have, let's see here. I think that should go, excuse me. Next, I would like to turn it over before, okay, I've got three things going on, I apologize. Is there a motion to approve the agenda with amendments?
Motion to approve the agenda with said amendments.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Great, it passed. That will be our agenda. Next, let's see here. We've got some introduction of guests. I would like to first start this actually with a statement read by our very own Vice Chair Fuller.
All right. Good evening. Seeing that it is Hispanic Heritage Month, I wanted to read a proclamation that was put on by our current president to witness the folks that are of Hispanic heritage. And I want to point out also that not everyone from Latin America goes by Hispanic, so I wanted to make sure that was clear. But yes, I wanted to make sure that we point out their tremendous continuation and involvement within our nation. So Hispanic heritage holds an what is it? How does it? I'm having problems saying it.
Indelible.
Thank you. God. Indelible place in the heart and soul of our nation. And National Hispanic Heritage Month reminds us that the American identity is a fabric of diverse traditions, stories woven together. Since the beginning, our country has drawn strength and insights from Hispanic writers, scientists, soldiers, doctors, entrepreneurs, academics, and leaders in labor and government. Our culture has been enriched by the rhythms, art, literature, and creativity of Hispanic peoples. And our deepest values have been informed by the love of family and faith that is the core of so many Hispanic communities. All of these contributions help us realize the promise of America for all Americans. During National Hispanic Heritage Month, we reaffirm that diversity is one of our country's greatest strengths. We also acknowledge that the Hispanic leaders who have stayed in the struggle for equal justice to ensure that everyone in this nation can contribute to their talents and have the opportunity to thrive. The President's administration is committed, and I also would say our wonderful district is also committed to success of Hispanic communities. Since coming into office, we have provided billions of dollars in loans, and then as we look ahead, we will continue to build a fair, humane, and orderly immigration system, fight to protect the rights of DACA. And we will continue to work on supporting that too. This means continuing to support a pathway to citizenship, there we go. This month, we carry on the important work of honoring Hispanic heritage. Let us give thanks to the many generations of Hispanic leaders who have helped build this country and continue to fight for equality and justice. Let us pledge to invest in the next generation of Hispanic men and women who hold the destiny of our nation in their hands. In recognition of the achievements of the Hispanic community and the Congress by Public Law 100 and 402 as amended, has authorized and requested the President to issue annually a proclamation designated to September 15th all the way through October 15th as National Hispanic Heritage Month. And therefore, it is written into law. I want to say happy Hispanic Heritage Month to all of our Hispanic community, and we will continue to support you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Andrews. Excellent. Next, we're going to turn it over to Superintendent Owens.
Can I stop you
please.
for just a second? Vice Chair Fuller, have you logged into Zoom? Are you on Zoom? I don't see you.
No, because I can't get into my Wi-Fi. I can't get into Wi-Fi.
Okay, that's why I don't see you. I don't know if somebody wants to assist her or not.
Thank you. And then I will log on to Zoom. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for troubleshooting. Go ahead, Superintendent Owens.
All right, we've got two new administrators to feature tonight who are new to our district. One is here virtually and one is here in person. I'll first introduce Gung Huang, who is in transit right now on Zoom. If you can, Brian, pin Gung, that would be great for us to be able to see him. And Gung, make sure you're only listening to us and not watching us, please.
Yes, I'm not watching.
Okay. So, I am pleased to welcome Gung Hong as the new assistant principal of Centennial Middle School. Gung succeeds Nathan Buck, who has become the interim principal for Centennial Middle School. Gung comes to Centennial School District from Portland Public Schools, where he served as a school psychologist and an administrator in the 9th grade LEAP program at McDaniel High School. His duties included change of student enrollment, family and community engagement, school discipline, and student conduct. He also led student credit recovery, instructional planning, and oversaw and implemented the student intervention team to support students with academic difficulties by aligning tiered interventions. Prior to working at Portland Public, Gung worked at Ridgefield High School at the Education Service District 112. While at Ridgefield, Gung managed student assessment and interpretation for students in life skills classrooms. He also collaborated with staff to support the medical and behavioral needs of students in life skills to determine their emotional, cognitive, and social needs. He also worked at Union Ridge Elementary School as a kindergarten to 6th grade a little echo, as a kindergarten to 6th grade school at ESD 112, where he assisted students with behavioral difficulties and provided support for their adjustment needs. Gung also was key to maintaining student reports, records, and files to document their psychological and developmental histories. Gung earned his Bachelorette of Arts in Psychology from California State University, Long Beach, a Master of Arts in Education, and an Education Specialist degree in School Psychology from San Diego State University in San Diego. He most recently earned his administrative credentials from Portland State University. Gung comes to Centennial with a wide range of skills, leadership, and expertise to serve all students at Centennial Middle School as the new assistant principal. Please join me in welcoming him to his new position.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be a part of the community.
Great. Thanks for joining us, even though you're in transit this evening, and safe travels. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Great. And we also have Carl Reinhold, who's here in person. It is my pleasure to share the selection of Carl Reinhold as our newest assistant principal at Centennial High School. Carl is here tonight and is succeeding Zachary Ramberg, who is the new Centennial Virtual Academy principal. With over 22 years in education and 13 years serving as a school administrator, Carl has extensive experience in public education at the elementary, middle, and high school levels in various settings. Carl served as the principal of Rosemary Anderson High School East, where he managed all aspects of guiding instructional practices, school improvement programming, and managing staff. During his tenure, he grew strong community partnerships, implemented collaborative instructional systems to increase student outcomes, and fostered a robust restorative school culture. Under his leadership, the Rosemary Anderson High School East doubled the student graduation rate to 95%. Carl knows our Centennial community well. Most recently, Carl was the principal of Rosemary Anderson High School at New Columbia. He worked to facilitate equitable, inclusive practices in the school and oversaw the development of a new career and technical education center supporting new music and sound design, computer programming, and graphic design programs. During his time as the principal of Rosemary Anderson High School at New Columbia, the graduation rate tripled. Prior to working at Rosemary Anderson High School at New Columbia, he served as the head of school at East County Open School, dean of students, vice principal, and principal of leadership and entrepreneurship at LEP Public Charter School, humanities teacher at LEP High School, principal and assistant principal of Self-Enhancement Inc., SEI, Academy, social studies teacher at SEI, assistant educator, director of Sylvan Learning, fourth grade teacher at McKinley Elementary, and fifth grade teacher at Findlay Elementary, both in the Beaverton School District. Carl obtained his administrative certification through Lewis and Clark College, where he also received his Master of Arts in Elementary Education. He has a Bachelor of Arts in History from San Francisco State University and also attended Howard University in Washington, D.C. Carl's known amongst his peers as being a dedicated professional who uses a positive growth mindset to build trust with students, staff, families, and community partners in a systemic approach to equity and collaborative decision-making. Please join me in congratulating Carl on his new leadership role. Also, Mr. Miller, feel free to come up if you have any words that you'd like to share about Carl as well. And Carl, there on your table there's a microphone, and if it's green, then it means that you're able to speak to the audience.
Testing. Okay, all right. Oh my gosh. I am blown away. It was, I can't recall, but several years ago I was in the same room as the principal of Rosemary Anderson High School East and speaking to the positive nature and the power of our relationship as it related to us supporting your scholars and you supporting our scholars, right? So I'm just like, it's surreal to be here. That person on paper really sounds pretty cool. I mean, like they've done a lot. And I haven't because there's always more to do. So all of that speaks to so many other people that helped me to get to where I have, where I'm at now, with the hope that there's more to come. And so I can't tell you how appreciative I am of the opportunity. Briefly, I will say that I am a kid who was misled, who, for a variety of reasons, thought that I wasn't able to do and to achieve academically and, honor that side of who I am. And I was, like many, raised by a single mom with many challenges, right, that came with that. And that speaks to so much respect that I have for those that identify as female that are single, that are trying to raise children today. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. I want to honor those in terms of the space that we are upon, right? So, the Chinookan and the Confederate tribes of the Grand Ronde. I'm also a kid that stole comic books from the supermarket across the street because I wanted to read and I wanted to figure out what these big words meant, and when I could see a picture associated with the words, I could figure it out. But when you just gave me a novel or a book or a text, it was difficult until we got to this section with a lot of pictures. I am also, and I don't know how much time I have, so I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time. an individual who was so severely pigeon-toed, and I don't think that's the right term that one would call it today, but way back in the 60s, that's what we referred it to, or referred it as. To the extent that I had braces, to the extent that I had to sleep with braces, to the extent that it was very painful to exist. And I went on to become a person who ran track and found a lot of success in sports. And so I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity. One never knows how many walks around the sun that you have left in your journey, and to be here serving as opposed to collaborating means so much to me. My purpose is to serve all. You know, we come in the packages that we are, right? But I want it to be very clear that I am all about youth and what is best for scholars. And I hope and I feel that you are too. And so, Chairwoman, Madam Chairwoman Rose, Vice Madam Chairwoman Erica, and other members of the board, and I believe we have one missing. And then we also have a scholar of ours who is a member, who's not here, who I saw at our soccer game. I want to just say thank you. Lastly, I will say that this is, despite what many think now, I would ask that you be truthful in your existence as a board, that you name our reality, because that is what I'm sensing is going to be our major challenge. There is Centennial in all of its beauty and its grand nature. And there are those at our high school who have been there for so many years, right, serving. And their grandfather went there. I mean, it's just like crazy. Like, I've never seen that. It's awesome. And then there's this new experience, right, in terms of who we're serving. And the need to adapt often to that which changes year to year. So I join you in naming that reality, owning it, and then kind of looking at, okay, this is what it is, right? And now what do we do? And then how do we measure what we do so that all are successful? Young people like Carl. And you should know, those of you who are board members, those of you who support educators, those of you who are educators, in a way, I think we all are educators, but let's say that you have that frame of reference that may vary. It's a noble profession. The board supports those that are serving. We support those that are on the front line, from the people that are cleaning up to the amazing individuals in the high school, in our middle schools, and our elementary schools. And as we deal with the, the messages that we get and all of the criticism around teachers and schools, and it's a noble profession. It's so amazing to have this opportunity. And it breaks my heart that there are some that are considering leaving our industry. So I say to that, I'm here, and I'd like to be a thought partner, a collaborator, individual that serves and is student-centered, and I'm fully committed. Like the gear, fully represents the Eagle Nation. I heard you speak to that, I think, a little earlier, and I'm sure many of you are probably from this community. And so thank you for the opportunity. I hope that I can be a lens and help to change while also maintaining some of that awesome legacy that the Centennial School District has. So with that, I'll say thank you and move out so you guys can get to the real business that you have tonight. Thanks. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing. Thank you so much. I don't know if you know, I've been, in my day job, I've worked for Friends of the Children for 20 years. And so your reputation precedes itself in the youth empowerment community here in the Portland area, and we are so honored and lucky to have you on staff. And we are here to serve you as well. So thank you. I look forward to working with you and continuing to be thought partners. Welcome. All right. Next up, we've got some approval of minutes. The minutes were distributed in your board book. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Or no, sorry, to the meeting minutes from last time? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the board minutes, meeting minutes as is?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That looks like it was unanimous. The meeting minutes have been approved. Next up, we've got public forum. I do not believe we've received anything.
We did, through our board email.
Oh,
You received two emails from people who technically are not constituents.
okay, yes. I don't consider those necessarily some public comment that we need
Okay.
to
All right.
address. Because if it's, I think that if it's coming from someone in our district, I would be happy to address it, but when we look on those maps and see that it's not even people in our district, I actually called the company that does those, and it's done by county. So there's no way they can filter out per school district. So that's why we get a whole bunch of those, and there's nothing that's gonna change. Thank you. All right, next up, we've got reports. I'd love to turn it over to Superintendent Owens at this point.
Perfect. All right. Plan to keep this report short because we have a power-packed agenda this evening. So I want to preserve as much time as possible for these topics. As noted in my weekly email to the board, this is a busy week. We've got 4 evenings in a row with district events. Last night we had the Facilities Plan Update Committee, and it met for its second of 3 meetings. Here's some pictures that you can see on the PowerPoint of the meeting from last night, courtesy of Chief Communications Officer Albert Rosales Correa. The committee is charged with determining the best and most effective use of the projected $4 million in remaining bond proceeds. At last night's meeting, the committee reviewed the items which were below the line from the 2019 Long-Range Facilities Plan process and began to prioritize projects. At the next and final meeting on Tuesday, October 11th, the plan is for the committee to reach consensus on a recommendation to bring forward at the November 9th board meeting, at which point the committee report will be provided to the board. Director Andrews, Shields, and Hardin are liaisons to the process, so I will offer them the opportunity to share anything that they may like on the topic if they would like.
$4 million is not very much money. It's not going to go very far, but it is good to have, it's good to have it on that side and not the other way around.
I want to give some gratitude to the BOC, to Director Southerton, to Scott Rose, and everyone involved. The fact that we passed this bond and we still have $4 million that needs to find something is really, really commendable and an amazing feat in itself. So thank you and great work.
The only thing I would add is that through the process and recognizing what Director Andrews said, there, $4 million isn't going to go very far, but it does make us reflect on what our needs are and the continual needs of the district, so that we can utilize that $4 million, but also utilize the skill sets that the former Facilities Update Committee did and the BOC is doing now to inform the next bond effort, which is really just around the corner. I think Director Southerton said it was like 6 years, but frankly, for the Yes for Centennial Kids PAC, that means maybe 3 before we should start really talking about and doing, organizing ourselves so that we can talk to the community about all of the good things that this bond has done and what we'd like to see happening with the needs and expressing what the needs continue to be to have a quality program reflected in our buildings for our students.
Great, thank you. Tomorrow evening is the OSBA Fall Regional Meeting. This fall's meeting will include a legislative roadshow. That's what you'll see on the PowerPoint. You'll see the graphic that they're using for that, which is an opportunity for board members to provide input that will shape OSBA's legislative agenda and to let them know how they can best meet your needs. At this meeting, board members attending will have the chance to meet the region's Legislative Policy Committee representative, hear the latest update from the Capitol, and find out about OSBA's legislative priorities, principles, and legislative agenda. I look forward to seeing some of you there. And as was noted and reflected in Director Hardin's outfit tonight, the Centennial High School homecoming game is coming up this Friday, September 30th versus Forest Grove. Directors Andrews, Shields, Lynn, and Sheriff Solowski will be joining me in the parade, which will start at Powell Butte Elementary School and end at Centennial High School in the stadium. Board Secretary Jordan will be providing additional information so that participating board members will have the details that they need to participate. And Vice Chair Fuller. Vice Chair Fuller. Add her to the list. Thank you. All right. Finally, in my weekly email to the board, I shared a final draft of my work plan for the year, which includes a focus on bond projects, Destination 2023 key priorities and strategies, and strategic planning for beyond the 2022-23 school year. If there's any remaining feedback on the plan, please let me know. I know Director Hardin shared a small piece via email. Otherwise, we can consider the most recent version, and I'll address Director Hardin's feedback, which we might want to clear up here and now. The piece that you had noted was with respect to regular updates versus quarterly updates. Is that right? Relevant. Got it. Okay, perfect. So no need to qualify the updates because they're all relevant. Okay, I get it. Got it. And with that, that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. It looks like our next report will be a board zone boundary revisions report. Superintendent Owens, again, I'm passing it to you.
Great. And Pam, can you, McKay, yep. There's McKay. I see McKay's name. I don't know if McKay's gonna. There she is. Great. Brian, can you pin McKay so that we can see her? Great. So we can see McKay. You might recognize McKay. McKay Larrabee is familiar from last year's comprehensive boundary process that we conducted with Flow Analytics. She is here for part 2, which is the board zone reconfiguration project that we went and conducted recently. I will say a few comments at the risk of stealing some of McKay's thunder because she may have similar thoughts in her presentation, but I want to make crystal clear that the project that we're embarked in tonight and that we've been doing this fall has no impact on student attendance boundaries at all whatsoever. So I just want to make sure that that's clear because we're talking about boundaries, but at this point we're talking about those boundaries that reflect board zones, the 3 board zones that we have. And so the project that we have was a brief project, and it was a reflection of a couple of things. Number one, the 2020 census, and then also we had just undertaken the comprehensive boundary review last year, so it was prime time to take a look at board zones, which had not been reviewed in quite some time. There's some obligation for school districts to review these from time to time, and McKay will give the specifics around what the rationale is for a review and some of the factors that we looked at. So without any further ado, and Pam, if you can allow her to do screen sharing, that would be terrific. Perfect. And I'll go ahead and kick it over to McKay to share with us, and I'll add any sort of commentary that's needed along the way.
Well, thank you so much, Superintendent Owens, board members. It's a pleasure to be here with you all again this evening. I'm going to share my screen. So let me know if, can everyone see my screen? There's a lot of red lettering.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. So tonight I'll be talking about the school board redistricting. Again, not to put too fine of a point on it, but it is really important to know that we're just looking at school board director zones only. We are not looking at attendance areas. This will not affect any students or where they go to school. I know Superintendent Owens just mentioned that, but I think it's really important. It is underlined here and underlined throughout the presentation. So please keep that in mind. So why does the district need to redistrict their board zones? So every 10 years, the census comes out. So school districts need to review their board zones to make sure that there's equitable geographic representation throughout the district. Centennial has 7 board members. Now, 3 of those board members are representing geographic zones, zones 1, 2, and what we will be calling zones 1, 2, and 3. There are 4 board members that serve at large. Now, all of the candidates for the three school board zones must live in the seat of the director zone that they live in. So there is a requirement there on geography. But all positions, regardless of whether you are representing a zone or you are at large, are all elected by all district voters. So they represent the entire district in their board actions. And so the board is already coming from this to this with a district-wide perspective. So it's a much different process than when we were talking about attendance area changes. So again, this is not attendance area changes, this is board zones. Just a quick overview of the timeline. We started back in April looking at the process overview. We had an administrative workshop earlier this month to identify to look through the draft maps and identify the final map. And we are here this evening to vote to adopt the final map today at this board meeting. So why it's important when we are redistricting to keep these certain aspects in mind. Hold on one second. Okay. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Hold on one moment. You're okay. Okay. Sorry, I've got my daughter here and she got a little freaked out by Alexa, and who doesn't really? My apologies. Why don't you sit right here, okay? So it's important to keep these redistricting considerations in mind when we're redrawing boundaries. These criteria are based off of the Oregon Office of Secretary of State Redistricting Directive from September 9th, 2021. That's after the updated census comes out. The census comes out every 10 years. So these are important considerations. The zones must be population balanced, and I'll talk about what that means in just one moment. The zones must be contiguous, meaning they can't reach up and grab an island of population. They must be all in one area. Redistricting must be drawn in compliance with all local, state, and federal laws, including the Federal Voting Rights Act, and this process does that. Redistricting must not be done to favor or disfavor a protected class or political party. And I might just mention here that flow does not work for any political parties. We are merely looking at the census blocks and the demographics within those blocks, the building blocks of the zones. The zone should be as compact as possible. And a lot of times, because special districts are oddly shaped or can be oddly shaped. This is used kind of as a comparative measure. Sometimes it's harder to have compact districts. Your district is pretty good with your zones being compact enough. Zones should preserve communities of interest, and we'll talk about that as well. And then zones should preserve the use of existing natural boundaries and as well as roads. And the blocks, the building blocks of the zones, the census blocks, already their geographies already do those things. So so that's not an issue in building the zones. And then the zone should not split any census blocks. That's because we don't know where those folks are living within that census block. And so it's important to keep all the census blocks whole, and so that we can make sure that we're taking into consideration the correct statistical analyses. So when we're talking about population balance, we're talking about, it's important to remember that we're considering total population. So this reflects the principle that an elected body represents all residents, not only those that are eligible to vote. So keep that in mind when we're talking about population. The key metric is that we'll be discussing is called deviation range. I will refer to it as population deviation. And what this is it takes the entire population of the district, and it divides it by 3 because you have 3 zones. That's going to give you this ideal population line. When we know the ideal population line, we're going to look at the zones that are the highest above in the percentage of that increase, plus the lowest below that ideal population line. Those numbers combined, those percentages combined, gives you the population deviation or the deviation range. This deviation really needs to be under 10%, but you really want to shoot for under 5%. That means that you're representing more equal numbers of population. We also see less legal challenges when you are under that 5% threshold. Not saying that you would be challenged, but it's important to keep in mind. You want to try to go low. You always want to strive towards 0, but I might mention we've never had a district that actually had a 0% deviation range. So this is what your current population, your current board zones look like as reflected in the 2020 census. The total population of your district is 45,611, meaning that the ideal population is 15,204. That's with rounding. That's the number that you're shooting for with each of your zones. Currently, zone 1 is at 14,639. So that's 565 residents under that ideal population line, or negative 3.7%. Zone 2, similarly, is under that ideal population line by 554 residents, or negative 3.6. Whereas in contrast, you have zone 3, which probably isn't a big shock to all, more development, greater growth in the past 10 years, is at 16,322, or 1,118 above that ideal population line, or positive 7.4%. So when you add the 7.4% to the lowest under, which is that 3.7%, you get 11%. That's with a rounding error. So you get that 11% population deviation range. That is over that 10%, and that's the number that we really want to get down under 5%, if at all possible. It's important to take into consideration here that zones 1 and 2, because they're under that ideal population line, it doesn't mean that they haven't had growth in the past 10 years. It just means that the growth has been slower in zones 1 and 2. It hasn't kept up with the growth that zone 3 has experienced. So when we're looking at changing zones or balancing the population, we're going to see some change here in population going from zone 3 into zone 1. So you'll see the color change from purple, which is zone 3, into beige, which is zone 1. And we'll see some color change from purple, zone 3, to green, to zone 2. Because essentially we need to move at least, around 500, maybe more residents from zone 3 into both zone 1 and zone 2 to make sure that your population deviation range is really low. So with that, I'm going to go through the final map for adoption. 11% is not, we've worked with districts that have a very high population deviation. Your district, again, is at 11%, which is pretty good, but you want to set yourselves up for success in the next 10 years. Because the next time this will happen will be 2030 with the 2030 census. And so the considerations that we utilized for the final board zones were the lowest population deviation with the least change from your current zones, and it also allows for growth. And I'll talk about what that means. What happens here is there's about 7 census blocks. If you look, you can kind of see all these little squiggly lines. Those are the census block geographies. So they are sometimes oddly shaped, especially if they're in more rural areas. In more urban areas or more populated areas, you can see that they actually incorporate a whole a city block. But they can be very oddly shaped, and some of these are a little bit odd. But so in order to replenish zone 1 and get its numbers up, zone 1 takes on about 7 additional blocks from zone 3 here. So they're changing from purple to beige. And zone 2 takes on 3 blocks from zone 3. So these 3 are turning from zone 3 purple to zone 2 green. When we move those population blocks, we end up with zone 1 with a population of 15,306 or positive 102 from that ideal population line, the deviation being 0.7%. Zone 2 is at 15,240. That's 36 over that ideal population line, or positive 0.2%. Now zone 3, and this is where we were saying it allows for some growth. Zone 3 is at 15,065, or it's under that ideal population line by 139 residents for negative 0.9%. When you take that 0.9% plus that 7.7%, you end up with a total population deviation range of 1.6%. And so that's a really low population deviation range. It still allows for some growth, which is most likely expected in the next 10 years. So it gives you a little bit of wiggle room for growth in zone 3. All districts are likely going to have to redistrict into every 10 years. And so you're going to have to go through this again in 10 years. This just gets you a little bit of a leg up on your work that you'll have to do in 10 years. If we kind of look at these side by side, you have the current board zones here, and you have the final 2022 board zones here. You can see the 2 areas of change are here. Now in your current zones, zone 1 already picks up these 3 census blocks south of Powell here. We've added to that with the final zones. So again, adding in 7 more blocks to that area. And keep in mind, we can't go down here and grab a population block down here because that wouldn't be contiguous. That's one of the rules that we have. So we need to stay contiguous. It also keeps your zones compact as well. And then zone 2, again, zone 2 to make its numbers increase is taking 3 blocks from south of Powell. So these 3 blocks change from purple to green. So again, you end up with that total population deviation range of 1.6%. And finally, I'm just going to do a zoomed in version of those blocks. So this is your current zones for the area between zone 1 and zone 3. Currently, this is the configuration with the zone 3 being purple, zone 1 being beige. That changes. And so these 7 blocks here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These blocks all change from purple to beige. So they're changing from zone 3 to zone 1, making sure that we're increasing zone 1's numbers. And then another zoomed in here of the current zones for zone 3 and zone 2. These 3 blocks, 1, 2, 3, changed from zone 3 to zone 2. So they changed to green. And so with that, I'm going to go back to this map, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Go ahead.
So zone 3, is it, the reason why it's so big is because it has more rural landscape to it? Okay, just wanted to know.
I like to consider it the Alaska of our school district.
Yes, so zone 3 has grown the most. And again, it's not to say that zones 1 and 2 have not developed, experienced development over the last 10 years. It's just that zone 3 has outpaced zone 1 and 2 in their development. So zone 1 and zone 2 have grown slowly at approximately the same rate, meaning that they are both about the same under that ideal population line, whereas zone 3 has grown twice as fast or twice as large. So it put zone 3 currently at over that ideal population line of over 1,000.
Thank you very much. This is very succinct. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Great. I'd add more, but I think you covered it. And riveting stuff, McKay. Appreciate it. And very detailed. So good work on that. I think you captured the rationale of what we were trying to accomplish. And I think this map does that with the least amount of change while getting it within the percentage deviation that we want. So that'll come up in new business a little bit later in the agenda. What you'll also see accompanying that is corollary to this process, but not connected to McKay's work, is there was a request to have the board zones and positions be reflective in terms of numbering, and you'll see that come up as well in new business. So want to express appreciation to Director Shields for getting this process initiated. She had pinged me with a few emails over the course of last year, just reminding me that it's time to get this on the radar, and then the timing came to do it. So we appreciate McKay's expertise as usual and ongoing partnership with our district as we work to shore up our boundaries. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Next, we will move on to our next report, District Strategic Planning Report with Director Callahan.
Great. And then I will see, Pam, can you have Lauren?
Yes.
Keep forgetting the word tonight. Promoted. Thank you. Promoted. Good. There you go. Now I will remember it. Thank you. All right. So continuing on, we have Lauren Klaftke here from Performance Fact, and she is joining us from the East Coast, so it is a little bit after 10 there, so I appreciate her staying up for us this evening. And so we have the opportunity with Destination 2023. We are in the 22-23 school year, so we are there, and it's time for us to think forward beyond 2023, or at least this school year. And so the process that we're engaged in, we touched on during our board retreat over the summer. And so Lauren is here this evening to give us a deeper dive. And we've done some preliminary planning in terms of getting some of the groundwork laid with respect to our process and dates. And she'll be able to color between the lines and give us a little bit more detail in terms of what the process entails. What I'll also add is that while we're doing, and I know that Director Callahan will speak to this as well, and she'll hold up the book as I say it, while we're doing Destination 2023, what comes after, the strategic planning for that, we're also on a parallel track with ODE's requirements around aligning for student success. And so we have two projects that are working in synergy with one another in terms of how we're accomplishing this. So Lauren will give us the detail as far as how the normal strategic planning process works, and then also our thinking with respect to the ODE requirements as well in terms of enhanced engagement and so forth. So I'll turn it over to Director Callahan to cue us up a little bit more, and then we'll turn it over to Lauren to go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent Owens. Good evening, Board. So when we did our retreat overview, we really we're just getting our legs under us, as we still are. And so I didn't spend a lot of time on this, but I will make sure, I think James said he'll share the link with you so you have it, but we'll also get you a hard copy of this if that's helpful. But basically, this is from the state. These are the guidelines that they're putting forth for our integrated planning. And so what I anticipate happening, although we're still in the planning stages, is as Lauren works with our district for strategic planning, we'll be paralleling what's expected and where are we in the timeline, and making sure that we're connecting the dots here as well. So.
And so with that, I'd like to welcome Lauren Klafke, who will share a little bit with us.
Great. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. It's wonderful to be with you this evening. I now see two of myself on my screen, so I'm going to start presenting because that's kind of weird. I'm going to share some slides. I think they were shared with you in advance. And I wanted to just take some time to walk you through the approach that we're going to take and our pathway forward for strategic planning. And there will be time to ask and answer questions throughout the process. Let's see. Here we go. First, I wanted to just introduce you to our team. They're not all with us tonight. I am the one who's here and has been working predominantly with the team at Centennial. But we have a small but mighty team that's located out of Oakland, California, although only two of our team members live in California. Mutio Fagbai is our president and CEO, and he founded the company in 1994 after a very solid and exceptional career as a chemical engineer working for Eastman Kodak. But he developed a passion and inclination to support schools, developing a Science in the School program in Rochester City Public Schools, and that kind of led him on his journey. We have a stance that we take in our work that we like to put out front right from the get-go, and that's we see our role as being a facilitator of a process. Facilitator, the word comes from the French facile, to make easy. And our hope is that we will both make the process of strategic planning easy for the community. And we will have a way and a manner in which we lead communities through strategic planning, but ultimately it's up to you. This is your plan. This is your community and your future that you're co-constructing. And so ultimately it's up to you to follow the pieces that make the most sense. My background, I've been in education for over 20 years, started out as a classroom teacher in northern New Mexico, ended up at UC Berkeley to get my master's degree in education, and then have worked basically my way through administration up to being chief academic officer of a couple different school networks in California. So that's my background and what I bring to the work. There's lots more fun facts we'll learn about each other as we go through the process, I know. What we pride ourselves in doing in our work is aligning our external perspective with your internal vision for your students, your schools, and your community. And we, a little bit about us, we have core values that we focus in on, but really it's around ensuring that we are attending to where there are critical needs that we identify in working in schools and school communities, and that we are paying attention to moving as quickly as we can in order to accelerate learning for all students. We're focused on shared and mutual accountability. We believe in continuous learning for everyone in the system, ourselves included. We learn through the process of doing this work as much from our clients as we hope you will learn from us, but it's all grounded in trust. And so our core values actually were established first as a company, and then the name came from that.
We have worked with over 100 different school districts. In fact, the first client that Mutio had when he founded the company was the state of California, and doing the strategic plan for the Department of Education in the state of California. Right now, I'm very excited we've already kicked off our work at Hillsborough in Oregon. And so it's been interesting and engaging to learn about how our process dovetails and aligns with what the new integrated guidance is. And I think you'll see that the process that we've set forth is going to fulfill and meet most of those requirements for the process set forth from the state. I want to share just our what we call our premise, and it really undergirds everything that we do. And we share it up front because we want to make sure everybody knows where we're coming from. And so that if this premise makes sense to you, then you've hired the right group to work with. So our premise is that we believe that all students will learn at high levels when instruction meets their needs. So what a student has not learned well yet is something that they have not been taught well yet. Okay. And so when we think about student learning, we think of it as an effect. And the cause lies in the quality and effectiveness of the educational practices in the system. And those educational practices are teaching practices, leadership practices, organizational practices, decisions that the board makes, the superintendent, but also all this people going all the way down to the work directly in the classrooms. And if we want to have transformed or new or improved outcomes for kids, the focus is not on the kid per se as the issue, where we need to grow our muscles, and it's in the continuous improvement of what the adults in the system are doing, because ultimately education is an adult game. So this is where we stem from in our work. And the second piece that I'll show you is really essential for us, is how we view why you should plan in the first place. It's not about having the shiny document. It's not about, checking some compliance box. We suggest that the primary purpose of planning is alignment. We represent this by simply wanting to move from the arrows on the left to the arrows on the right. Misalignment happens all the time, right? You might have your back out of alignment. You go see a chiropractor to get an adjustment. Your car might be out of alignment. You take it in to have the wheels. I don't know what they do to make a car in alignment, but I know that my car's been out of alignment before. And so misalignment happens all the time. And you can often still function. School still happens, but it doesn't happen optimally. And it doesn't necessarily get to the ends that you seek, because you might be working at cross purposes in sort of an individualistic way versus all aligning towards a shared goal. And what I'll say just simply though about that with the arrows is that we represent the arrows as being different shapes, sizes, colors, because getting into alignment doesn't mean abandoning or lessening your unique perspective, but it is about agreeing towards pointing that perspective towards a shared outcome. Okay. So the process is really essential in the planning, because that's how we get to alignment. So it's been fascinating. I love signing in early for to board meetings to hear what's this, and it was great to hear the new leader who's being appointed and the boundaries and the growth in your area. But this is just a quick snapshot. We call it the profile of your students. Data is a part of our process. And data is just information that helps us diagnose what's going on. It's data about our student experience, is about the effect the adults are having. And part of how we look at data is to understand what are the different experiences that our young people are having and their backgrounds and how those shape those. So you have a very diverse school community in terms of race and ethnicity. We present this rather than looking at percentages. We like to present data out of 20, because we think it humanizes and brings it more to think, if I'm sitting in a classroom of 20 students, who's in the room? Okay. And so here you'll see that's how this data is represented. You also have other ways that we can look at student backgrounds or experiences, or things they're experiencing. So students who experience disabilities, 3 out of 20 students in your district, have our English learners, you have 8 out of 20, and students who are experiencing poverty or who's qualify for free or reduced lunch, it's 12 out of 20 students in your district. And I'm sure you're deeply familiar with this information. So what is the process? The process that we use for strategic planning is pretty simple. We try to keep it very straightforward. And we have 7 phases that we go through. And we're in phase 1 right now, where we ask, is everybody ready to go? Right? How do we ensure that everybody's ready to start in the process? What we do is we move forward from there to do a real assessment of current state. And that's going to be where we're doing a significant data collection and review. And that's already started in our partnership with Director Callan and some of her staff. Once we do that, we start into the plan itself. We say like, okay, so now we know where we are, we see the data, we understand it, where are we going next? And that's where you're going to be really focusing on your goals and your measures and what are the ends that you seek. And at that point, we pause and we really engage in a series of stakeholder reality checks. We don't want to design a plan, get too far out ahead, and then just roll it out and say, well, what do you think once it's all done? We pause during the process and continually take along all of the different folks to get their real-time input, feedback, and adjustment as we go through. So how do we do it? The cornerstone of our approach is around embracing diverse voices and perspectives. We believe that meaningful engagement actually strengthens not only the understanding and appreciation of the plan, but the commitment to see it through and support it. And so we represent this by all the different constituents that you might have in your community. And the way in which we harness these diverse voices is through having a series of teams. I'm going to take my time to kind of explain this part because it's probably where a lot of the questions will come from around the process. So we represent this as like a hub where there's in the middle, we have our core planning team. And then there are several teams that surround the team. The core planning team is in the center because it is the team that's intentionally designed to have all of these voices in that team. Students sitting next to somebody in later leadership, sitting next to a teacher, a community organization representative, the superintendent, a parent, but everybody is sitting at the same table as equals, an equal voice in that core planning team. And that team spends the most time in terms of their time commitment. And they also take on a role of integrating all of the other teams' feedback, thoughts, and ideas as we go through the process. So they are really significant. Depending on districts, those teams might be smaller, 20 people, or upwards of 150 people. It really depends on what the district is looking to do. The additional teams that we have surrounding are several that we call both listening sessions. So we're gathering input, and reality check teams where they're telling us whether or not the work that's being done is on the right track. There are 3 that are required in our process. The first of which is at the top of the clock at 12 o'clock is at the student voice team. The student voice team, there's 2 different phases of it. One is as a listening session, right? So we're going to be doing focus groups. I'll be there for 2 days in October, conducting focus groups for elementary through 12th grade, getting input from students. And then later in the process, they're going to have their own student voice team, different configuration of student voices, who are going to be going through similar activities as the core planning team, looking at data, making suggestions, contributing, and providing feedback on the plan. So students are involved in 2 ways, and that's a really core piece of what we believe is essential to the work that we do. The second must-have is that right directly at the bottom that the 6 o'clock position is all around community forums. And community forums are designed in 2 ways. One, to both be a listening session, gathering of information, input, as well as a reality check on the current work that's done. And those community forums can be held in different manners. I know you just had your board zone districting. Some folks think about having those community forums by board zone, if board members want to think of it that way, or it's just at large. And so we can talk a little bit about, what's in the works for that. But those community forums are open and they're for parents and families, and then community members who want to join. And then the third required team is the instructional focus team. And this is the IF at the, I guess that'd be like 10:30, maybe over there in that position. And that team is completely comprised of folks in the system in Centennial School District who are involved in instruction. So your site teachers, your principals, who are your instructional services staff, et cetera. In addition, there are all these other teams that I will run through but won't highlight in as much detail at this point. The campus department teams come into play towards the end. Once things are getting a little bit further along, you go out and you want to take the plan to every single campus and gather the feedback and input from that, from the school sites. The AL is the alignment team. This is a team where it's purely the community-based organizations. It might be mayors, it might be city managers. We call them sort of tongue-in-cheek, the movers and shakers in the community. So it could be partners, and that's their own team because they bring a really unique and special perspective about how they are supporting the district. And so we'll have an alignment team. I know we're going to have that in with your community. We have the superintendent's leadership team. We just meet with them on a regular basis. And then we have the board, which is you. So you are your own team. Although we do suggest that and recommend that the board, while that you get regular updates and engage in particular pieces just as a board, that you kind of save having your full board input until we get further along in the process. However, we do recommend that a board member or two, or just fewer than a quorum, sit on some of these teams. So you might have 3 board members who are on the core planning team. You might have a board member on the alignment team. You might have a board members who are, participating in the community forums. Okay, so there's different ways that you can decide which group you want to follow through the process. So we encourage you, if you're interested in being more deeply involved than just getting the updates and waiting until it's more complete, to be on one of the additional teams. So I'm going to stop there. That was a lot. So I wanted to just, I'll go ahead and take some questions. Anything about the process before we get into kind of like some of the content briefly.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm looking around the
Yes.
room. Yes, Director Andrews.
Thank you, Lauren. That's really helpful. I haven't been involved with educational strategic planning efforts in the past, but I have been involved with other strategic planning efforts. And typically, not typically, every time we've done strategic planning where I used to work, we did something called an environmental scan. Is that kind of old school, or is that, where we understood, all got on the same page with regard to what's going on in the environment at the current time and forecasts of where things are going. Like in the example I think of is education, is what's going on with enrollment, for example, so that we're all on the same page with regard to key issues, whether it's demographic issues or economic issues or whatever. Sort of in your alignment, you go to your slide that had misalignment and alignment. It's so that we all get aligned on the basics. Is that part of your schedule, or does that show somewhere else, or is that just not something that's necessary in educational strategic planning?
Well, I can walk. There's 2 things we focus on, and while I can finish by the presentation to talk really about what our needs assessment looks like. So I can move to those pieces. You can decide as a district if you want to do more of a community and like this environmental analysis of what's happening in the larger community. right, in terms of those trends. It's not something that we found as being essential in the early phases of the planning process. And the reason why is because of how we position planning. And I'll share that right now. So
Lauren,
let's-
do you think
Yeah.
that, and just in case any other board members have questions as well too, but
Come back to it.
do you think that the equity audit that we have been talking about helps to address some of what Director Andrews just mentioned? It may not be some of those aspects, but it does cover a lot of the demographic and student outcome elements.
100%, we are going to be focused in, sorry, my slides, I'm going to make you dizzy for a second. The first part of the actual work, so if we move forward to the work itself, the scan that we do is really grounded in doing, this is just the basic with the strategic plan. So we're going to be looking at 3 data sets in depth. Okay, we look at student voice, student perspectives, we look at outcomes data, right? And we look at access data. So to what extent do students have access to the resources, experiences that they need, equitable access to those resources and experiences to be successful? And that's our first, when we talk about phase 2, where are we now? That's what that is. It's all about what does the current state say? And we're trying to get clear on what the current state is. We organize our analysis, and this is what one of the things James was referring to. We organize our analysis, and we've adopted a set of indicators as the approach that feels right for us to think about how we monitor what's happening in education. In 2019, the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine actually produced a report that really looks at how do we look at what educational equity is and monitor what that equity, what equity would look like for our schools. And in that report, they suggest that you focus on key domains. If you're going to do an analysis of your system, focus on key domains and indicators to be able to assess the extent to which your system is rising to the challenge of making sure all learners are being supported, learning and growing. And so I'll come back to that. So this is the analysis that we do to get to your question around what is our environmental landscape. We first think about outcomes, kindergarten readiness, what is the current state of K-12 learning and engagement for students, and what does educational attainment look across the system. The second set looks at the extent of racial, ethnic, and economic segregation within, not only within the district, but also within schools and within classes within schools, and enrollment in programs. We look at access to early learning programs, which is sometimes beyond the doors of the school. So to what extent is, early learning ages 3 to 5 quality programs widely available in the Centennial community. We look at curriculum and instruction, and we look at what supportive classroom environments are. And so we'll be producing a report that is kind of that first level of scan by just looking at, it's more like a data analysis of kind of a paper scan. We have been in conversation with Superintendent Owens and the team around doing a much more robust audit, which we'll get into more in depth in terms of a more robust needs assessment, but still aligned to these domains that get into more work with direct work with focus groups around staff and community to better understand the current situations. And it could be that part of that equitable access to certain programs or systems could also involve more things like the quality of the facilities or whatnot, depending on what you're looking at. But these are the research, these are the research indicators that make a difference for kids. In terms of if we can do these things well for all students, then we're going to see stronger outcomes for all students. Not that helps.
I'm going to keep going if you don't mind, just for a minute. So for example, I would think one of the things we would need to take into consideration or be aware of or whatever is the difficulty in hiring staff.
Very good.
And not only the current difficulty, but, you know, what do we think it's going to be like a year from now, 5 years from now, that sort of thing. And how can we influence that, I guess. So I'm not sure, I'm assuming all that type of information, so it's not just demographic, there's just a lot of information that we need for a baseline and for a projection. I'm assuming that all fits in here to the slide that you're showing now, the two types of indicators.
Where that one would fall, just sorry to interrupt, but where that one would fall would be in domain F, which is like access to high quality curriculum and instruction. What that actually looks at is staffing.
Okay.
So both qualifications, diversity of staffing, you know, that's one of the elements. And let's see if I don't have the detailed piece here, but I can share with you the full report too that will give more of the detailed measures. But yes, it definitely staffing is a huge element. It's one key element that we look at in our plan process.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll just hope that it all kind of comes together. Thank you.
Any other questions? I had one
Anything
question.
else?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you identify, prioritize, and engage stakeholders for that alignment team?
We rely on the district to share with us. You know, all teams are formed by the district.
Okay.
So we have shared kind of some guidelines around, you know, the diversity of teams representative who you would want to have in those groups. But your team here, I know, is working to like being very detailed in all of the teams to be looking at having a reflective and diverse voices and points of view. Some districts, boards oftentimes have a nice list of people out in the community because you're the movers and shakers too, right? So sometimes boards will recommend or make a list of a whole bunch of folks and share that with the superintendent, and then from there they're invited because not everybody, you know, has the time to commit to coming to, you know, it's 3 or 4 meetings over the course of a few months, but it's something that we could recommend. There's also room at the table of the core planning team for some of those folks who you think are like really critical partners and collaborators who you want to have be part of the core planning team as community organizations or community partners. So there's 2 ways you can bring that in.
Thank you, Lauren.
I can address that as well. One of the things that we're currently involved in is putting together a community partners inventory so that we have a catalog and a warehouse of all of the community assets that we have in different categories. We have that information, but it is not neatly organized at the moment. And so, in fact, Albert, Denise, and I met last week so that we can start developing what are the broad categories that we want to make sure that we are listing those who are involved in our community. That could be anything from parents to faith groups to community organizations that we partner with and so forth. And so those are kind of scattered in different spreadsheets and documents. We're trying to pull all of that together because as you saw the core planning team graphic that Lauren had, there's a seat at the table for a broad variety of different people in the community. We want to make sure that we are thinking about all that are out there and casting the net as wide as we can so that we can get as many diverse voices to the table as possible. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to leave it to the end, but since we were already on this subject, I had reached out to the Superintendent Owens and Chair Fuller and Vice Chair Fuller and Chair Solosky about this issue, about community engagement, particularly when I was looking at the calendar. I was seeing kind of one forum squeezed together with the parents and community members, and it's an hour and a half, and then the rest is kind of TBD. I know this is a capacity issue, but I really hope that we can do more than kind of just check the box of community engagement, and like you say, start to grow that list and engage that list on, operationalize that so that we're doing meaningful community outreach. We're actually hearing feedback from the community. We have, several cities we serve, 7 or 8 different neighborhoods. So it's, without those people, what I've seen in the past is just kind of a superficial, show up to a forum if you want or not. There's going to be parents there talking as well, and you might get, one question in if you're lucky. So I really hope that we can really go through that process in a meaningful way and, do that a lot more than
I
just
agree
that
with you.
one
No,
forum.
that's great. I'll let Lauren speak to that, and then I can clean it up as well if there's any details to be added.
Yeah. So the community forum, so there's sort of 2 separate entities. I think one, the place for that deep engagement with your community partners and feedback is, 1, identify and invite some folks to be on the core planning team. 2, anybody you want to bring in, like the alignment team is a great space for that work. It's all people who are, that's their lens, right? It's around the work that you're doing out. I just finished, we just kicked off the alignment team in Hillsborough, and I was floored by there being 3 mayors on the team. I didn't know that districts had multiple mayors. This was new to me. So I don't know if that's a similar, if you heard a similar thing, but like different, having everybody who can kind of come together and have that conversation around how are they supporting the work. And the way that we do the process with all of the teams is everyone goes through the same process, whether it's the community forum or it's a team. And I want to share with you what that process is. So every team starts with the data. Every team starts with the analysis of what data we have. And we focus our analysis predominantly, it's around those indicators, and it's focused on student data and the things that are going to make the most difference for students. And so we take the data. That's our first step. We ask the simple question, what do we have? So that's where we are right now. We're gathering it. When we come together and we have our first team meetings, we're going to be engaging in our analysis and discovery. We want to come to agreement about what the data says. What is it telling us, right? And we spend the time there to really, all of the teams engage in the process, and we review to say, what are our primary areas of strength that we see and the primary areas of concern just based on the data. And we get into agreement around what we're seeing, because 2 people can look at the same set of data and see it differently. And it's through the conversation and discussion that they come to bring that lens. But it's not just the core planning team that does that. It's the instructional focus team. It's the alignment team. It's the board. It's everybody's going to have a chance to kind of come into agreement about what you're seeing as the most important areas of, concern and strength. And then once we have that, we turn to, well, why does the data look this way? And we start to move into root cause analysis. And we want to do that because we really want to understand what the underlying causes are for student outcomes. So, and if we do that part really well, which is one of the reasons I think why your district is interested in going even further and having a more robust root cause analysis by doing a deeper equity audit. If you do that really well, then the solution, which is basically your plan, we say, what are we going to do about it? The solution becomes really clear and easy to implement. Well, not implement, but easy to kind of pull together. And this is how, once we get to the solution phase, this is how we construct or position the plans. And I'm going to come back to kind of how the teams intersect here. Your plan itself is going to have 3 components, and these align very much with what they're being asked to do for the state. The first part is where we always start, is identifying student learning. And up front, we start by focusing in on what we want for kids. And during that time, there are some things that you already have drafts of from your previous strategic planning processes for the Destination 2023. And we're just doing a revisit, a refresh of those. But there are some things that were not as clearly defined. So one is that we're going to work on developing a portrait of a graduate. We're also going to make sure there are very clear goals and measures for student success, including benchmarks, performance benchmarks, and looking at any kind of equity indicators that are necessary to be paying attention to where we need to accelerate learning or increase opportunity for students. And that's the first phase. And we go through the analysis process and come up with those drafts. And we take all of that out to the parents and the community. And you might want to have more community forums and, add on some virtually or do those in addition to just kind of cast a larger net. It's definitely something we can do. Some boards were very interested and just really did want to have like a community forum per area or, different things. And we can do that, but we do that. They all go through the same process. Once we identify what we want for students, then we talk about, we take instruction out of all of the other things that you're doing before, before hiring, before facilities, and before anything that's around infrastructure. And we define the practices and what instruction needs to look like to ensure that we're getting those student outcomes. That's the second phase. Once those two things are done, then we turn to, okay, how are we going to build the system and the infrastructure to get there? What strategies, strategic priorities, and key actions do we need to implement in order to achieve? And you'll see that this part in section 3, what we get to as the third phase is around alignment of resources. This is where, you might be bringing in more of the operations or more of the considerations around, recruitment. All those things might end up being a strategic priority in the process. But every team has their hands in student learning. Every team has a chance to kind of really participate deeply in circle number 1. And pretty much every team also has their hands in the strategic priorities. The instructional effectiveness, this one we reserve for really focusing in on the teachers and the instructional focus team. They really take the lead on this area, although everybody does have a say in that 4 pillars, although you guys have your district priorities already. So those will, we're going to refresh those, but they might stay the same. So just to get a sense of what the flow is, starting with students, what we want for kids, then what are all the necessary supports to get there. So that's having a separate, and I love the idea of separating out in a sense, the community piece and then the parent piece. And it's something that some districts have done where they've said they just want to have parent forums or caregiver forums separate, right, from community forums, because those perspectives might be somewhat different or need to have space for both. So we can be, those aren't fully fleshed or formed yet because we hadn't talked to you or, really engaged yet in what we want those to look like. So this is the chance where we can shape those to make sure they're going to meet the needs of the board and the community.
I would add to that, and I know Director Wright was involved in this process back in 2019, and Director Callahan and I have talked about this as well, and that's part of what was being referenced with the Aligning for Student Success is in those processes that we've gone through before, there's specific engagements with focal groups, historically underserved focal groups in particular, but a broad range of different groups beyond the engagements that were discussed here that we're also planning on layering into the process beyond what's demonstrated in the timeline here. So what you see here is just kind of a baseline of the activities that normally happen within the planning process. And then we plan on doubling back and outlining specific engagements with particular groups. And it'll be good for us to collaborate as an admin team, but then also with the board in terms of what groups that we want to identify to make sure that we're specifically engaging. Lauren, does that match the process in terms of how you see it as well?
Yeah, 100%. So there, we can layer in any and all information that's gathered that could supplement, the planning process that we might not necessarily gather as a typical run through. with strategic planning, but we can bring in and help. You can even help with those forums, and we can help bring in that data in a way that's processable by the different teams. In addition, if there is like the projections of what the staffing situation is going to look like, or if there's projections around growth and demographics, we would bring those in when we start to look at the strategies and at that point in the work. So we can layer in a lot of key elements if you do a deeper analysis and a deep dive into different areas.
Thank you. Were any other questions? Excellent. We really look forward to this process and engaging with you. Okay.
I'm sorry, this isn't really a question for Lauren, but looking at the calendar, are we going to identify who's going to be on which teams and represented tonight, or are we going to do that shortly, or? how's
Lauren,
that
can
gonna-
you show the slide with,
Yes,
yeah, that would be great.
the
With
dates. Yeah. Yeah. The first engagement is the core planning team. So if there are members who would be on the core planning team, that's November 14th and 15th.
Yeah, we had identified 3 board members during our board retreat this summer to be representatives to the process. And so those were Chair Solowski, Vice Chair Fuller, and Director Andrews as representatives to the process. So
Great.
Lauren, correct me if I'm mistaken here, but the engagement that those board members would be involved in primarily would be in the core planning team, so row 3, potentially in the alignment team, row 5, and then
Yeah.
obviously at the board, which those board dates up there are reflective of existing board meetings, so that's not an additional obligation.
Chair.
Yeah, you can decide, folks will go in different directions. We've had, 3 board members. Sometimes I think we even had 4 board members who sat on the core planning team the whole time. It's a big commitment in terms of the time frame, and it's great if folks can. We've also had folks distribute that, like 2 people on the core planning team, 2 on the alignment team, doing things like that. So it's really up to what works in, I think, the schedules, as well as folks wanting to roll up their sleeves.
Go ahead.
I love community forums. I would love to be on the community forum team, as well as the alignment team. Thank you.
Terrific.
Noted. Thank you.
It's terrific.
What we've been hot and heavy on in the last couple of weeks is getting these dates mapped out and established. And so once we get those pinned down, because you see there's a few DPDs up there, we're hoping to clean that up in the next few days and then start to really advertise and push out those dates to the relevant parties that we are hoping would participate.
That's great.
Is
Okay.
there any more presentation, Lauren, or are we?
No, we skipped a few things, but I think you have an agenda after this, don't you?
We sure do.
Yeah. So I skipped a few things that I'm going to bring back when we come to October 26th. I've made notes of your questions and some of the things that it's really helpful to hear the questions you have, because it lets me know what you really want to make sure we're attending to in the process. We're a small team, and we pride ourselves in being partners with the districts that we work with. And so I'm looking forward to partnering with you over the course of this year in this work. So I look forward to seeing you again in about a month. And I'll come back with, then those dates will certainly be firmed up.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
What I would add is the board obviously has a strong and leading leadership role in this process. So as we start to produce more information about it, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can engage Director Callahan and Lauren in helping to address questions, and then also incorporating your input into how we form the process. So I appreciate the engagement tonight and look forward to more collaboration.
Yeah, it's really terrific.
Along the lines of the calendar, something that would be helpful for me would be the definitions, as Lauren shared with us about the exact, these teams. I get what a
Sure.
care planning team is, but just a little bit more detail of that.
Yeah.
It's gotta
Interesting
be
that you should say
somewhere,
that. You can see Dr. Katsuda over there. She has designed something
Excellent.
that incorporates exactly that.
Perfect, so that could get sent out
Yeah.
to us, so we would know. And then I think one of the other things is because this is such an aggressive calendar, which is great, we should be doing this work. We know that things come up in our own personal lives and we can't do it because there's something just coming up that particular time. And I know Jess and I have teamed a number of committees that's been really helpful because I can't, Jess can, that kind of thing. So I know that we have individuals who are committed to it, but, like a substitute or some other backup person, when we look at this entire list and where you have board members who are the primaries, and then just maybe some people who could come in if necessary, if somebody became ill or work commitments or whatever. It's been nice. It's worked really well, I think, that we did this last year on committee work. I'd like to see that continue.
Are you volunteering to be a backup?
I'm gonna look at the definitions of those teams again, real carefully. And maybe
Yeah.
the numbers-
I would recommend that if you do have like a or a backup situation, that that everybody does their best to attend the first meeting, because that's where all the ground setting is, and really the processes of coming into getting those arrows in alignment is around the story that evolves through the process. So it's exciting. I think it's really awesome to have such an engaged board. It's not always this way. So I'm looking forward to working with you all and having you in the process.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Callahan, as well. Next up, we have an enrollment update report. Would you like to introduce?
Yes, all right. So annually, we have the start of school, and after the start of school, we have our enrollment that we are able to form up as school initiates. We have projections in terms of how many students will attend, but we don't actually know until students are actually attending. So an important number for school districts is the 10th day of school, because that is the point in time in which we know if a student is enrolled and they've shown up, or they are not enrolled and they are dropped off the rolls. And so at this point, this provides a really good opportunity for us to say, here's what enrollment looks like for this year after we've gone through the first 10 days of school. So we'll turn it over to Director Southerton, who will walk us through a lot of detail in terms of how things are shaping up for the year. So thank you, Director Southerton.
Excellent. Thank you, Superintendent Owens. And just as a reminder or preview, please feel free to ask questions along the way. We had so much change this year that you will see that reflected in the graphs and in the numbers. So going from a K-6 system to a K-5 system, 7-8 to 6-8 from 7-8, you're going to see that influence the numbers. I've tried to provide slides that would show a before and an after, so you can kind of normalize the numbers, if you will, to see where the trends are. But please, feel free to ask questions along the way, stop me, I can go back and forth, and we can, of course, have questions at the end. So thank you for the opportunity to present the information. So this chart will illustrate kind of where Centennial's been over the last 10 years. So this takes us from 2012 to 2013. And you can see, as you will recall, that we've kind of been battling some declining enrollment in the district. That was occurring prior to the pandemic and then was accelerated during the pandemic years. What's not reflected by the chart because of the scale is that enrollment is stabilizing. So we are seeing a slight decrease from last year still in the initial numbers, but we believe that the decline throughout the year will be less, and we will end up in the same place, if not better, than where we ended last year. And I can share some data on why that may be as we get through further through the charts. So important to know that we're not seeing rapid declines that we were seeing in the last 3 years. It is stabilizing. Elementary, as this chart illustrates, is actually lower this year by roughly 315 students, but that is largely, as I said, for the change in grade level. When we normalize this chart, as we're seeing in the second slide here, we'll see that we're actually up with elementary students. If we were to take the 6th grade classes that are now in middle school and we were to put them back in the elementary numbers, we would be at 2672 instead of 2601. This is fantastic news because where we observed declines during the pandemic were largely in those K1 and 2 years. So to see those numbers come back, to see those numbers normalize and increase is really great for our district and for our community, because we know how formulative those years are and how important it is for students to have that structured learning environment, create those norms of engaging with their peers, you know, connecting with the other family groups and community members. So it's great that we're seeing those increases at the elementary level. And again, that's not what you're going to see necessarily when you look at the student count report, because that's no longer including 6th grade, but it is the same levels that we have traditionally measured over the last 10 years. Likewise, when we look at middle school numbers, the numbers are skewed this year. It looks like we had a dramatic increase because now we're measuring 6th through 8th instead of 7th and 8th only. I've normalized that with another slide here to kind of show you what it would have been had we not made that change. You can see the numbers are really close. There are 30 students difference between 958 and 928. When it's important, I think, to have that historical data, and that's why I put the 10 years on the slide. It shows you that last year was a really large 7th and 8th grade class. I think our middle school administrators that were only at Centennial Middle School. Now we have 2 middle schools, but last year there was only 1. I think we can get them to agree that it was a very large class, 7th and 8th grade. We had, 950, nearly 1,000 students in that middle school environment, which had not been seen since 2014 and 2015, if you go back into the graphs. So 928 is still historically, over the last 5 years, a really strong number, pre-pandemic number for those grade levels. So if you look at 2016, for example, that's when it was last at 928, 2017, 924, 2018, 905, and so on. So you're seeing when we now measure those that you're getting that same 7th and 8th grade kind of class that we had seen historically. So again, good news to have stabilization of the numbers. Next, looking at high school. So this is where we didn't have any grade level changes in enrollment this year. We were 912 before, we're 912 now. So you can see we're starting out with very similar numbers in the high school level as we did previously. So just is good news as well. It is a little bit lower than where we were pre-pandemic. If you look at the 2019-2020 numbers, for example, that was at 1750. 2018, 2019, again, 1750. So we're having a little bit smaller starting class at the high school level. And James, I see a hand raised.
Just to clarify, these numbers that you're showing incorporate students who are in the brick and mortar settings in addition to CVA?
That's a great question, and it does not, because that's in a later slide where we're measuring that. We had non-traditional programs for the duration of the 10-year time period. They were serving different students and meeting different needs. We had CPS before, and now we had CVA, but there's still non-traditional students that were served in a different setting than our brick and mortar schools, so I chose to present that data in that fashion.
You're
welcome. And so that is the next slide. So you can see that enrollment switched from CPS to CVA at the beginning of the pandemic. CPS closed and CVA opened. And you can see the spike of that difference of folks moving to online for 2020, 2021, 466 students enrolled during the September-October time period. Again, I tried to use the same months because it does vary throughout the year, and we want to measure, make sure we're measuring the same data points. Last year we had 322, This year we have 204. So largely, when we're seeing numbers normalize in our brick and mortars, that is students returning from maybe a distance learning program, whether ours or somewhere else, or a homeschooling or otherwise. But it is also to say that a large number of students continue to prefer that non-traditional learning environment. 200 students is not insignificant, and that's across 12 grade levels. We are seeing more participation at the high school level. We have a roughly 136 students, I believe, if reflected on the student count numbers. And then the rest of the students are at the K through 8 level. So we are seeing folks really enjoy that in that model of education and learning. And I think that's going to expand as we continue to work out the hybrid options for students, so they can, maybe take some core classes online, and then maybe take some electives at their brick and mortar. And Director Callahan and Superintendent Owens can speak to that further, but it's wonderful to continue to offer folks a variety of learning opportunities, traditional, non-traditional, because we know not every student may find success in the same way, different learning styles and different preferred methods. So it's great that we're serving our community in that fashion. We also look at outplacements. So for a variety of reasons, the district does have some outplacements, and Director Wright can speak in detail to that. But again, it's largely because some people need a different environment. Some people need a smaller school setting than a traditional high school. Some people have disability that presents in a way that we're not able to meet that disability need and the educational need in our system, and we rely on our partners at the ESD. We have open school partners, Rosemary Anderson partnerships, and others as well. So this kind of shows where we've been historically over the years. I would say the decline recently, and Director Wright could speak to this further though, is our investments through the Student Investment Account and the Student Success Act of being a more inclusive district and building up our competencies to be able to meet those students' needs in district more often than we have been in the past. So there will always likely be a need for other opportunities, right? Other schools and opportunities for students. But as much as possible, if we can be an inclusive district and really have those competencies, develop those muscles, develop those competencies, and invest in those positions that we have over the last year, and kind of continue that through the Student Success Act, then hopefully we can continue to serve students or bring some more students back to our buildings. But certainly just another data point and something to consider, and again, how we work to meet all students' needs, whether they're filled through our brick and mortars, whether they're filled through our online school, our Centennial Virtual Academy, whether it's a hybrid between the two, or whether it's an outplacement specialized opportunity for them.
Do these outplacements include students who may choose to go to a high school out of district for family reasons, or, I know we have a certain amount of slots that we allow students to leave the district. Do these outplacements include all of those?
They do not.
Okay.
Great question. These are our students who are in our district and are going to another school that may be in our district, such as Rosemary Anderson, an open school, largely is in our district. The ESD is not, clearly. When we're having students go there, they're not in our district. But there are students living in our area that are working with our programs.
Okay, so then do we pay those other placements?
We do.
For these spots?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. We still, in ODE language, we still claim the students and are receive funding, but we do pay for that supplemental. So, great question. Thank you.
Director Anderson.
Another point, Chair Slawski, that happened the last time I was on the board that was news to a lot of us, including even the principal at the high school, is that those students also count in our graduation rate numbers and all kinds of different activities that are, that we think of as sort of narrowly focused on CHS or CHS and CVA, but it also includes these outplacement statistics as well, right?
And Director Wright has some detail that she can add to this as well.
Yes, so I would also like to share students who are attending placements outside of our district. Some of them are alternative placements that are choices and options. So students are coming to school staff and saying, this school setting isn't working for me because they are students who are moving into our district who have already been in alternative option settings, and they're saying, I've been attending a small high school for my career. I attended small settings in a middle school. I really would like to continue to do that. We have students who have not attended school for years and years and years, and then they're ready to re-engage. And so, you know, we have 17-year-olds who haven't been in school for 5 years, and they're looking for some other options. We also have students who we are required by law to offer a continuum of options. So if they're experiencing disability, those are alternative placements that as a district, we are determining that a student needs. In all of those cases, they are Centennial students. We are 100% responsible for them. We're responsible for looking for graduation, ensuring that their supports and rights and resources are provided, and we do get funding for them, and we are responsible. And we see them as our students. So we also have case managers who support students in all of those settings that stay connected. And so many of those students are participating in extracurriculars so that they're still connected as well.
Thank you.
Is Cal part of the outplacements?
Great question, and it's not part of the outplacements that are tracked. Those are elective classes that high schoolers take, and we have a placement agreement with Cal as well. I believe we have approximately 100 spots per year that we allocate, and they attend many classes at CHS, and then they get bussed over during the day to attend classes at Cal, and then they're brought back. So that's Superintendent Owens can probably speak to it better than I can, but kind of a pool school, a consortium or a collaborative engagement with multiple districts, but they're still our students, and we don't separate that out. Yeah.
Dad, you got it.
So overall, looking at our enrollment in the various grade levels and the various levels that we service, bringing it back to what does that look like for average class sizes. So at the elementary level, knowing that we don't have 0.3s of students, but just providing the math, it's 25.34 on average. We do have some class sizes that are larger. We have some class sizes that are smaller, but it's 23.34 on average. At the middle school level, taking out the special classes, so we have some small groups, we have some ELD, we have some other classes that aren't kind of in the mix, as we would say, because those students may attend some core classes and then leave to go attend another small group, but come back to the core classes. So looking at electives in core classes at the middle school level, both, we have about a 27, average class size of 27 students. Again, we have some higher, we have some lower, but on average it's 27. And at the high school, again, core classes and electives, we're at a class size of 25 students per class. I'm happy to pause there because class sizes are usually of interest. I'm happy to take any questions folks have. Okay, excellent. So overall, looking at our total enrollment data, what does this mean for us in budget terms or revenue terms, which, you know, is something we have to look at as much as we want to focus purely on the education. We have to be able to pay our staff and keep the lights on, so we need to look at the impacts of this. So current enrollment, 5624, so 5,624 students. We have waiting, as you will likely recall from the budget committee work that you all did. We are provided additional weights depending on how our students present and the extra needs that they may have, some additional needs. So our average weighting for last year was approximately 1.26. We won't know what our weighting is this year until we do the formal reporting, but using that as a placeholder, we can expect that our ADMW will be somewhere around 7,200. We have observed over the last 10 years that from the beginning of the school year till the end of school year, we have an average loss of around 100 students due to students moving in, students moving out, students withdrawing, and other issues. So factoring that in, we anticipate a net ADMW of about 7,098 We based our budget, you'll recall, on an ADMW of 7,088. So that means that we're roughly 10 students over. And I see a typo of 2021 funding ADMW, so apologies for that. Using the 2021-2022 funding amount, because again, it hasn't been determined for this year. We don't know exactly what the ADMW will be for 22-23, because the state needs to determine, they know what the budget is, but they don't know what the denominator is, so they need to see the total number of students enrolled in Oregon, then they divide by the budget, and that's how you determine your ADMW. But using last year's as a placeholder, understanding that for all intents and purposes, it should remain somewhat constant, we can see that it's close to about $100,000 in favorable revenue we may be able to expect if these numbers hold true. Now, again, it's early, it's still September, we have a long way to go, but this is just providing you an update that overall, we're on track with where we thought we would be, you know, slightly ahead of where we thought we would be. Hopefully, we are serving students in a way that's wonderful, and hopefully we have folks moving in and we don't see the numbers, the negative 102. We don't see the decline that we've seen in years past. Hopefully we see an increase throughout the year. And hopefully we have more folks coming back. But if the averages kind of hold, this is what we can expect. And your student counts that you receive every board meeting or every month will kind of provide that ongoing update of what we're seeing. So overall, you know, how does that play into the budget again, and what are some things? So we've got a minor positive variance, so that's a plus, that's great. We'll continue monitoring enrollment. Obviously, new enrollments would be a positive for us. Further 10-day drops would be a decline and be a negative impact. 10-day drops can occur throughout the school year. They're not only at the beginning of the year, and then we know we're kind of in the clear, or we have our student body count finalized. So we continue to monitor that throughout the year. So we'll just want to be on the lookout for that. We'll continue to utilize our expense controls that we have in place. So budget compliance tools in our purchasing software, reducing non-essential purchases if needed, and continue to have a director level approval for all purchase orders to make sure that they're in line with board policy, they're compliant with the budget that was allocated and using for the intended purposes. And with that, I welcome any questions you may have.
Great. Any questions? Director Shields. I mean, I have them too, but you go first.
Just something about the past, which you may not be able to answer simply because, you know, you're still kind of a new guy around here.
James says I can't say that anymore,
Oh,
but
really?
thank you.
All right, Superintendent Owens. We had, especially at the high school, and these are years back, where we literally had somebody tracking down our students who were not attending school. And, you know, that's somebody that, well, we've had it as a volunteer position, we've had it as a paid position. Where are we in that, in terms of identifying our students that we know exist, but aren't in our classrooms or aren't in our alternative environments? Do we have ways of?
I'll kick it off, and then I'll turn it over to Principal Miller and Director Wright to provide some detail as well. I see them smiling over there, knowing that they might get called on. But we do have some efforts at the high school, and Principal Miller can speak to that. There's a couple positions that are dedicated towards looking at that specifically. And then we also have Reconnections Coordinator that we added to our, so you might want to keep the mic for a second, Director Wright. A Reconnections Coordinator that we added within the last 5 years, I believe, with Measure 98 funds to help reconnect students who had at some point in time, as was provided in Director Wright's example of somebody who'd been disconnected from school for a few years and wants to be reconnected, in terms of helping facilitate that happening. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to the two of them to provide more detail.
All right. Okay. Another piece that's happening countywide, because we're not the only district that has a large number of secondary students who aren't engaged, Pre-pandemic, there were about 6,000 students that they were estimating across the Portland metro area that should be engaged in school that weren't. And so what's happening with the MESD as the hub is all of the partner districts are working together, and especially East County, there is something called East Bridges that's coming together, and it's collectively, specifically having outreach opportunities and efforts to re-engage students. And so there's information that went out in many places across the county so that students have an access point where if they're ready to engage, if their families are ready to engage, a family friend sees that they need to be engaged at school, it will hook them up and it will come back to which district that they come to. So that's a big countywide effort. There's also efforts happening with thinking about Gresham. They have Gresham Youth Services right now. So to help counter some of the community violence that's happening, they're really trying to pump up youth services. And so they're also thinking about how do they re-engage students in the school district. And then additional folks that we have, I think Principal Marin was also thinking about, we have some staff who have really cool positions in the district that help to engage students in exciting ways. So one of those is our youth transition specialist, that her job solely is supporting students who could have barriers to employment due to a disability. And so part of that work, while that seems like that's after high school, the work that's happening within high school is helping to keep students engaged as well, and it's also re-engaging. So we have a student who started this year who did not attend at all last year, but because he had a connection with her, they stayed in connection all year, and when he was ready to re-engage, had a point person at the high school, and then they've re-engaged. He played his first football game a couple nights ago, and so there's cool things like that happening on individual student basis. And then I'll pass it to Principal Marin for some other things.
Yeah, and we also have 3 different staff members that are working on different aspects of this, such as attendance, re-engagement coordinator that was also mentioned, and we also have our Tier 2 and Tier 3 teams that are specifically, and particularly our Tier 3 teams, we're wrapping around services around students that might be either in the process of disengaging, and then figuring out what the barriers are, and then going deeper with those particular students and saying, hey, why aren't you coming to work? Coming to school, what's the different, barriers to those? So, I mean, it might be as simple as, and we even have, like today, we handed out bus passes to 2 students that were really struggling just to get to school. And that was a simple barrier we could overcome. So I'll be honest, a lot of the issues are way more complex. And so we had one just 2 days ago where there was a lot of different issues going on. And we were able to work with our social workers, we were able to work with community partners, we had REAP involved in this, and we were able to help this student that was disengaging from school to really figure out a plan, and we developed a plan to help them engage. And that's what we need to do is we go out there, we seek students, and then we figure out what the barriers are, we figure out how to engage them, and we figure out how to support them. And to be honest, we love them, we wrap our arms around them. We get a person connected then in the school through our advisory programs, at least one adult in that school that student can go to, and that's how we get them engaged back in. So we're actively searching, we're putting those systems in place, and you're going to see this probably in the next couple of years as these processes continue to get better, and we're going to be bringing more students back in. You'll see those numbers continue to rise, and that's our hope.
I have a follow-up question to that. Is there like a process that starts at the 10-day drops that they like automatically get pulled in so that you're doing something for those as they come in addition to everything that's happening?
Ideally, it happens before the 10 days.
Yeah, so ideally, and that's part of one of the positions that we have where it's particularly talking about, working around attendance even before that. And that's what those Tier 2 and Tier 3 teams are trying to do is those re-engagements. But once you do that 10-day drop, that's where the re-engagement coordinator comes in, and it's seeking out, and it's the support. They are our students, even, we are out there, we are helping them no matter what.
Great, thank you. Yes, please.
I don't know if this can be public knowledge, but I hear that a lot of the issues that you guys are facing in terms of like making sure that the students are having the resources that they need to make it to school or to even be able to participate. I would love to know, like, if you can share, what are some of the frequent barriers that you've been hearing from the students?
It's a lot of the stuff you would expect. I mean, as you're going out, I know each of you talk in our community right now. Transportation is really big. Even right now, transportation is one of the barriers that we're continuing to work with. Resources is another one. And to be honest, the deepest thing that we're running into is just the trauma and how to help. We have students that have reached the point where they're ashamed to come back to school for whatever the reason is. And so all that, and it's just helping that learning, that social emotional, and then supporting them and, helping them. But those are the big three that we're seeing a lot of. It's transportation, that trauma, and resources.
And for the trauma, would you say that, and I'm trying to just think off the top of my head of how because I know that especially is like one of the big barriers. Transportation and other things, yes, but when it comes to the trauma, that's something that you can, like, you lose your mental health over. And so I would love to know, like, do we need to get other, like, organizations that have access to those resources involved? Do they need to be cultural based? And what sort of, like, resources are we looking for?
So yes to all, and we actually have several culturally based different programs we work with. There are a lot of resources. The trouble is tapping those resources and getting them where they need to go, and that's particularly where the Tier 3 teams and the wraparound services come, and that's where, and you have helped with this, but our social workers this year are making a tremendous difference in the last several years because they are really helping align those resources. But we are still working on doing an even better job of coordinating our community partners and making that resources and getting the resources where they need to go out. If you're saying, yes, we do need more resources, but it's more the alignment of the resources that we need to do even a better job of. But I'd like to turn that over to, what's your opinion on this?
So additionally, as Marion had said, we are fortunate as a district. We do have a lot of resources and our community has a lot of need. And so one thing that we're also seeing is just the complexity of needs. And so while schools have resources to support, we have our social workers who are helping to make those connected. We also have families who having additional resources provided to them may not help the situation in the moment, and or the resources will help and there's still more that they need to heal from or to develop trust around, because we do have some school students who didn't feel safe in our schools before psychologically, or they didn't feel seen and heard and cared about culturally, and trying to repair some of that harm and to build that trust back for the students and their families to come and engage in schools and to feel like, this is their place too. That's a big piece that takes time. And so I think it's really, really complex. And so some things we're able to figure out. Sometimes the bus pass is like, whoo, we got it. And then others, we have folks that are working with the same family across multiple grade levels and for multiple years. And, we have students who graduate because of work that happened that started in elementary, and it took, a whole team of Centennial staff along the way. So we're continuing to look at the resources that we have, how we're using them, and many of our providers, while we would love to use some of our funds to access more providers, they also are having a hard time finding staff as well. So it's compounded in a lot of different ways.
Thank you. I know it's a complex issue, especially with the work that I'm doing. But wanted to see if there was like anything like we can do like right now in terms of for need for resources or connecting folks. But I trust that you guys have that, are continuing to work on that, and I appreciate you guys really putting the home, especially when it comes to trauma that a lot of the students are facing. So, thank you.
Thank you. I have a few more questions in the interest of time. Well, I'm just going to ask, Yeah, so we, at where I work, I was able to work with TriMet to get a grant. Do you guys pay for TriMet passes, or do you work through their grant program? Perfect. And then, you know, with that huge growth area in part of District 3, and this may not be a question for this presentation, this may be a question for another time, and please let me know that's the case. I'm curious, are we losing large chunks or neighborhoods to North Clackamas in those new development areas that are going in? Because I have a feeling that from the conversations that I'm in the community, there's lots of people who are like, oh, we're just going to North Clackamas, and I'm not sure what is really going on there.
Yeah, I can speak to that aspect, and maybe Dr. Katsuda can as well. I mean, our boundaries are preset, and
Yeah.
so those are established, and so they're either Centennial residences or they're not. And if they're on the border of Centennial or North Clackamas, those are determined. If those are being accessed through our transfer processes, that would be something that Dr. Katsuda could be able to speak to, but there should not be
Okay.
kind of the bleed that maybe you're referencing in terms of students choosing to go to one district or another unless they're engaged in the transfer process that I'm referencing. Have you been seeing, and you might want to grab a mic to.
Actually, there hasn't been an increase in transfer requests from, into North Clackamas School
great.
District from Centennial.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions?
One last one. Sorry, Paul. It's about how are the trends with our district compared to our other East County districts and statewide?
That's a great question. So I had a meeting with some of the peer business managers last week in Multnomah County, and they're largely seeing what we're seeing. So a leveling out of enrollment, potentially a slight increase over what they forecasted as we're seeing. They didn't have their numbers that they typically would drop out, or lose over the course of a year. So I'm not sure if they will end up in the same place, but I think we're all in the same area. And that was with Park Rose, David Douglas, Reynolds, Gresham Barlow, and Portland Public were part of that business managers meeting. So I think that is a good sample size, or something that we could kind of extrapolate across the state, but I don't have formal data on other regions.
Thank you.
Great. At this point, let's take an 8-minute recess bathroom break. We will return at 8:50. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Centennial Board meeting. We're back in session, 8:51 p.m. Next up on the agenda, we call everybody to order. Excellent, thank you. Hurry up, Dave. We are going to go through the confirmation items en masse. Is there a motion?
Move that we approve all the confirmation items.
Second. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Look at that, it's unanimous. All right, moving on to 7.1.1. Oh, excellent, the board operating agreements. So this, really excited. We have been working on this for a while now. You'll notice in your board book, the, it was back here somewhere. Yes, the board operating agreement, and the board superintendent operating agreement. At this point, I'd like for us to be able to adopt these as they are.
Motion
To adopt.
Rock, paper, scissors? No, just kidding. All right, is there any discussion that people would like to have, any questions that they have before we move to vote? Go ahead.
Are we doing both or just the one? I was reading and not paying attention.
I think that we can do both at the same time unless you see a reason to break them out.
There was one missing word in one of them.
Great.
I cannot remember where it is, but when I find it, it was just like the two something.
Okay.
I mean, it's nothing. So when I find it, I'll just send it to
Pam, yeah.
because it,
Okay. Great. Let's move to a vote. Those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 All right, it's unanimous. We have passed the board operating agreement and board superintendent operating agreement. Is this posted online for anybody that would be interested in reading it?
We can put it on the board page.
I think that would be great. We worked, I know that we put a lot of time into these, and I think that it really sets the tone for our board and who we are and how we want to move forward. So that would be fantastic. Thank you.
And I would just add, because I didn't get to vote, but I was participating in the development, that I felt like Vince did a really good job of reflecting the conversations that we had and getting us to agreement on these things. And so I feel like these are really reflective of what we talked about, and then also of just all the work that we collectively put in developing those. So I'm just proud of the board for their work in getting these established.
Yeah, great work. Yes, Director Shields.
Just a clarification, because it did come up earlier this evening about how we communicate. Piece about the emails. The response, it says that the chair will respond to those, but if they are outside of our district, we are not responding to those. I just want to clarify that. True?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
If they're coming from our constituents, then we will absolutely respond.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great question. Next up, 7.1.2, we're going to be talking about, or we've already talked about the potential to do some meetings virtual or in person. And at this point, I'd asked if I feel like we've had the discussion and open to any motions on the floor about any decisions or anything if we wanted to move forward with that. Yes, Director Andrews.
Well, I'd like to make a motion, and then we can, of course,
Yeah.
discuss. But, so I move that the first board meeting of each month be held virtually for everyone. When there is a second board meeting in the month, it would be hybrid. Board members would make every effort to attend the hybrid meetings in person. The first board meeting of each month be held virtually for everyone.
And the second was
Hybrid.
So the first board meeting being identified as the regular board meeting and the second being the work session?
Work session. And you'll notice that some months only have one board meeting. And that would mean that that would be virtual. So it's weighing more heavily on having virtual meetings than in-person meetings or hybrid meetings, whichever.
Before we move to discuss, is there a second?
Second.
All right. I would like us to go around and everybody get a chance to kind of speak their mind. David, do you mind if I start with you and work your way around?
No.
Director, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Solosky. Yeah, I have no great objection to the motion. As I said last meeting, I didn't see necessarily maybe the need for it, and see so we could everybody could kind of play it by ear. But if we'd like to try this out, I have no problem with that. I had some small reservation if there were in-person people showing up from the public, and then we were always having a Zoom meeting there. We might not see face-to-face with people, but other than that, I mean, really, I have no. That's a very small objection. So otherwise, I think it's fine to give it a try, I guess, if that's the consensus.
Okay. Director Harden.
I thought the first meeting tends to be a meeting where there's more updates and more involvement from the community. It's a public session. I would like to see that be in person, but I don't have a strong enough feeling where I would deny the motion either. I don't have a big feeling about that, but, you know, now that, you know, in this new evolution of life and virtual versus being in person, you know, it's all right, but I do enjoy seeing everyone. I enjoy being in person. You know, I understand the want to go virtual and, you know, the incentive of that. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. I don't see any reason to object the motion, though. I don't have a strong enough feeling about that.
Okay. Director Andrews.
I'm really, I mean, I tend to agree with you, Director Harden, that I like to meet in person. I'm really old school in that way, and I appreciate it. But I also recognize that staff are here the whole day and then well into the evening, and that they aren't afforded the same flexibility that we are with regard to being able to attend remotely unless there's extenuating circumstances. So I really see it as an issue of fairness across everybody. Plus, I'm not really great at driving at night, and I think I have the longest distance to go, which isn't far, but it's dark. Believe me, it's dark.
Yeah.
It's in Alaska.
Centennial.
That's awesome. Thank you. Director Gregory, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I appreciate the flexibility with how we've been doing combination of hybrid in person. Like, for example, tonight, my own situation is a unfortunate accident with a contact lens, and I wasn't safe to drive. So I appreciate being allowed to participate in the work session virtually. I feel somewhat like Director Andrews. The regular meetings, the one where there's more actual votes taken and such, I prefer in person, but I am willing to go along with the board consensus. I think a combination of virtual, hybrid, whatever is decided. I like Director Harden. I don't have enough personal objections to the motion to deny it either, but I just appreciate the flexibility so far and just my brief experience on the board. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Director Shields, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
I find it interesting that the maker of the motion is wavering a little bit on it. I tease you. I think there's value in being in person, period. Because some of us have lived in a virtual environment for quite a long time, longer than our newest board members, for sure. And there's something that's missing when we're not in the room together. I have absolutely no challenges with people having to Zoom in as needed, because there's all sorts of reasons why people need to be able to have that kind of flexibility. And I'm thankful that we have that, because we have not prior to this. So being able to come in virtually is something I'd like to continue. But I would like to see us be meeting together in person in this building. Now, the comment about staff, that's a decision that our superintendent makes about how and what the staff would be, doing. Whether or not everybody attends or they're here available to us virtually. Because, we are able to talk with people. The setup that we have here now is fantastic by comparison to what we've had in the past as well. And so if Paul were on the screen and we were talking back and forth about his report, I don't think we would have missed that kind of communication with staff members, cabinet members that we need. But there's things that we say to each other when we come in the room. There's things we say to each other when we're taking a break, and we talk to each other, and we get clarification. There's something about being together that I think is valuable. So I would speak against the motion, just because the way the motion reads, it says that every first meeting would be virtual, period, end of quote, and I don't agree with that. I would rather have one set meeting a month being together and another in a hybrid, unless weather conditions, maybe 4 of us are sick or we're coughing up a storm, okay, keep us all home, right? I don't know. I'm just real prone But I've been doing it for 11 years, so maybe that's part of it too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, thank you, Director Shields. Vice Chair Fuller.
All right. So I probably am coming from the community view, as folks with parents and there's the multiple students, and then what we're dealing with at this time with people having to basically work overtime in order to live and provide that. I think it's important that we do have a virtual option to make sure that they have access to us at that, way that they can, wherever they can, and they can come through us that way. I like the in-person as well too, but I also like the flexibility of being able to do that. And I think that'll help board members as well in terms of, one, learning about the camaraderie, meeting folks in person, but also having the flexibility to, if they have to be at work or, travel or different, personal family things come up. I am not swayed either way. I just would recommend that we would have some type of in-person or hybrid portion, and then have people use virtual at their discretion, but that's me. And also on weekends.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fuller. At this point, I would also like to hear from Superintendent Owens and with your thoughts on this matter before we.
Yeah, I'm conflicted on this motion. I know I don't vote on it, but, I've been asked for my input. And what I would say is, I think the opportunities to be in person, to be able to, we just had a break and there was a lot of small talk that was able to happen that wouldn't have been able to happen otherwise. So I think that that's a valuable thing. And I've requested that our cabinet be here in person to be able to participate in those things. Or, we saw the engagement that Principal Miller and Director Wright had, just in terms of being able to kind of answer on the spot. Not that that couldn't happen, virtually as well, but I think that there's just more impromptu when you're in person and able to kind of look at somebody and, say, you're going to talk on that topic or something like that. So I think that there's just more fluidity to it. So there's that. The other piece of it is, I average 3 to 4 evening events per week. So you tabulate that up, it's 80 or so evening events a year. The opportunity to have some more nights at home, be able to participate and do work, but to be able to engage virtually and not have the extra on-site obligation is appealing. And I can only speak for the cabinet. They're gonna keep stone faces, but I'm sure that I'm sure that factors in as well. So I think that there's a factor of that too to consider as well. So all of that to say, I can go either way. I like seeing everybody, and I think that having a virtual opportunity might be an advantage as well. I think that, to Director Shields' point, there may be some wordsmithing that may be important in the motion in terms of the ability to say, hey, this one really needs to be in person for whatever reason, if at all possible. And if we have something that's really cut and dry one way or the other, it may cut out that flexibility. So that would be the one nuance that I would just want to speak to.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say on the matter?
I want to talk again, but you haven't talked yet.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I see the evolution of the board meetings, but I do feel like there is definitely something to being in person. And so I think that, I think that if there's some wordsmithing, or if we could amend the motion maybe so that we could talk about that first meeting being in person, if at all possible, and then the second one, the work session, being more hybrid, I'd be in favor of that. I also would want to say, I value everyone's flexibility, or I value everyone's time and want to offer flexibility. But I think that what I also want is, if we're meeting in person, I'd love to have a quorum of board members in person. And so then how are we communicating when we hit that threshold of like, like the day of our, 4 of you reaching out to me saying, hey, I need to meet from home. Hey, I need to meet from home. Hey, I need to meet from home. What is that threshold for me to then call the district office and say, we're not going to have a quorum in person? Can we move to an all virtual meeting? And then I'd also like to recognize what the impact for that is on the support staff that need to be here.
I think it'd be a good idea if we put like a procedure in place for that exact reason. So like for saying, because things do come up even on last minute on the days, I would say for like if it's a board meeting day, that you need to make sure to alert the chair by no later than what? Does 2 p.m. work for people? Or I think that's another thing we would have to ask staff, support staff that's also helping with us as well too. Like what is too late? And how can we like be more proactive in making sure that that's not a continued thing? So like 2 o'clock, and then if you can't make it, or again, something comes up, communicate, but also like have that so many times you can go over responding to somebody after 2 o'clock, and then some penalty. I don't know. That's something. I know, right?
Go ahead, Director Lynn.
Yeah, I kind of lean away from adding extra layers of policies and procedures and extra requirements, and you didn't contact by 2 and you did it by 5 and now you need to feel like a jerk for it. And so I kind of lean away from that. And then I wonder, would Director Andrews, would you entertain, I believe what we heard, an amendment to the motion to switch it from the public session and the work session, and then add discretion by the chair upon request by other members to trigger that in-person meeting versus the virtual?
Yes.
Great. I would,
I'd entertain an amendment.
awesome. If,
Before we, Pam, did you want to add anything before we moved?
I get your point about not having an arbitrary number, but it felt weird when we only had a couple people in the room, and because we didn't have some kind of a protocol. And I think the public expects us to be in a public session and be here, but when we can't, or 4 or more of us cannot, you don't want to have just a couple of faces sitting in here. It looks weird, guys. So whether we make it a policy or the chair just takes a feel of what's going on and says, there's not enough to fill the room, and have all staff come in as well. That should be your discretion to text us all and say, hey, get on Zoom, we're all gonna be there this time, even though it's the first meeting, and the first meeting is where we are asking if we can be here in person, please be here in person. And then, but if not, communicate, and then chair, because we can all switch to virtual within minutes if we were planning on being here anyway. So just get to your computer and click on the Zoom link. That's, I think, something that you can handle. Look at before us.
Yeah, I was about to ask that. Is that like something that you, is not overwhelming to you? Like you have it like, I want to make sure that it's helpful for you as well as the rest of the board.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I actually want to make sure that is workable for you as well, back there in the corner. Do you have to be here no matter what? No. So if we're virtual, you're able to be virtual at home as well? Excellent, thank you.
More correctly, if we're virtual, he doesn't need to participate.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you for that definition, or yes. All right.
May I add
Please,
something?
please.
So I guess what So I'm retired, and I like to have flexibility in my schedule. And if I can plan that a meeting's going to be virtual, I may not be home. I may be somewhere else. And so I'm hopeful that there aren't a lot of situations where we need to switch over to virtual, because, it's an opportunity that I could have been gone, but that I'm trying to be here so I can be at the meeting in person, because that's the way it's planned to be, right? So that's just a personal perspective. And then I also wanted to add, we have trouble recruiting and retaining board members. And I think the more virtual we are, the more likely we are to actually keep people. But that may not be quite right either. It just depends on the person, I'm sure, but that's an issue as well.
Thank you.
I have a contrary opinion to that. I think in person, we're able to get to know each other and become more cohesive than on a Zoom screen. And if we are having new board members, which it seems to be a similar cycle, then I think that we can develop that relationship with each other better in person than on a virtual screen. I understand the participation, and I'm fine with saying one meeting is virtual, one meeting is in person. I can see the benefit of that. If we're doing one in person and one virtual, though, I would say the public session should be in person, because as a public session, it seems like we have more to vote on. And so, so we need to have that quorum here. And if it's in person, show up, please. Show up. If it's virtual, coolio. Do it from California, do it from Alaska, wherever you are. But if it's in person, show up. That's a responsibility. That's what we signed up for. That's our obligation to the community. So that's my opinion.
Please.
So I'm hearing that the regular meetings, which are the second week of every month, would be held in person, seeing that as the usual and customary public meeting that we are attuned to. And that our second meeting, if there is one, would be held virtually unless there was any really lead time that says we would have to come to the building, because I could see, as an example, something that we're working with the strat planning, you really wanted us all here because we're gonna small team things or whatever. But meeting one, here in the building. Meeting two, virtual. Meeting one would only go virtual if there were so many of us that were not able to attend, that the chair would make a recommendation for us to get on the Zoom meeting together, but we would still have our meetings. And the fact about staffing, that's the superintendent's call, it's not ours. So once the board is established, what the norms will be, that the superintendent then has the discussion with the cabinet and how that norm works for them. So that's what I'm hearing.
Would we like to amend the motion to that?
I would make the friendly motion or amendment to switch the days for the public session to be in person and the work session to be virtual, and discretion for the chair upon advice.
Second that.
The maker of the motion has to accept it. It's a little.
Okay, that's accepted. I accept it.
And the second must accept it too. Who was the second?
I did. I accept it.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
Yep. All right, so we're all good with that. Let's go ahead, and take a vote. Was there? Did you have something, Director Gregory, before we go to vote?
Oh, no, pardon me, I did not.
Okay, no worries, you're fine. So let's take a vote. Let's show of hands.
Can I stop you
Please.
before you do that? You made the
Amendment.
amendment. Who said?
Director
okay?
Harden.
Oh, well,
Director
the
Andrews
maker of
and
the
Chair.
motion has to accept the amendment, and the second has to accept the amendment, and then it can be moved forward as amended.
Yep.
You don't need a second on a friendly amendment.
Yeah.
So saith Robert.
So say it's a Robert rules.
Great. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Well, that's a unanimous vote. All right, the motion passes. The first meeting, the public meeting for our board will be in person. The second meeting of the month, if we have one, which will be a work session, will be virtual. And I have discrepancy to mix it all up whenever I want, so. Just kidding. Excellent. Moving on to new business. Superintendent Owens.
All right, you see the board note in board book. This first one is consider school board redistricting. The board note that you see here basically reflects a lot of the verbiage that was presented by McKay during the presentation, so I won't restate what's shown here, but the motion is for the recommendation from the administration is for the board to adopt the revised school board redistricting map.
Motion to approve the redistricting map.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Oh, is there any discussion?
Is there anything that you wanted to share, Director Shields, with respect to the process?
Hearing none, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. That moment.
It's getting late.
We have passed that one, and now we've got one more, Director Owens,
Oh.
or Superintendent Owens.
It's all good. Call me whatever you'd like. Yes. So the second one that we have here is accompanying, like I'd mentioned before, and it is to renumber the positions to reflect the zones. So if I'm getting this correctly, as is current, Director Lynn is in Zone 1. He's also in Position 1. Director Harden is in Zone 2. He's also in Position 2. Director Andrews is in Zone 3, but for some reason she's in Position 5. And so we have Chair Solowski, who is currently in Position 3. The recommendation from the administration is for Director Andrews and Chair Solowski's position numbers to be flipped so that Director Andrews is in Zone 3, Position 3, and then Chair Solowski is in Position 5 at large.
To redistrict or renumber the school board positions as presented.
Second.
Discussion, anyone? Please.
Does that change anybody's term of service?
No. No, it just changes your number. No. We do need to submit the information to the county elections office. And so they need to know both for Multnomah and Clackamas County. And we have consulted with McKay, and then also we had our legal counsel, our general counsel, Paul Dikopoulos, with Garrett Heeman-Robertson on the meeting that we had for the workshop, and then he also reviewed this board note and advised as to what procedure to take with regard to county elections as well. So we feel comfortable that we can submit this information to them and they can make the proper adjustments on their end.
Thank you. Any other questions, clarifications? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Ah, unanimous votes all night long. I love it. The motion has passed. With that, brings a close to our new business. At this point, I'm opening the floor for any future agenda items. Please, Director Lynn.
Well, I just wanted to take this time and say thank you to Director Fuller. I think everybody's gotten her email by now, and I just wanted to say thank you for your service. Thank you for always speaking honestly and sharing with us your experiences. And it was a wonderful experience serving with you on the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all gonna make me cry, so don't do it. I do want to thank each and every one of y'all for welcoming me on the board and listening to my experience. My goal has always been to give back to the village that helped raise me, and that was Centennial. And if it wasn't for a lot of teachers like Miss Rufy and Fluskus and Lung, who's my speech teacher, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so, like, I really do appreciate every one of you for the work that you're doing to really foster those relationships in Centennial. Especially, you know, we're ever changing. We're always changing. Our district is always going to be changing. And so to, you know, really do the work that we need to do to make sure that folks are being heard is the main thing. And so I, of course, am not going to go far. I actually am moving into Northeast Portland, and but I do have a lot of work still in East County. My parents still live out here, so I'll be doing a lot of organizing out here still, and supporting y'all in any way capacity that I can, especially for a lot of things that I wasn't able to help with. I can help with gathering up community to make sure that their voices are heard. So thank you again, and this is not goodbye, it's just see you later.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Fuller. I'm not going to get all sappy here because I don't want you to cry, but I do want to just appreciate you for how welcoming you've been. I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I was appointed to the board, and you have really helped me make sense of a lot of it. So, and just from day one being welcoming and reaching out to me and inclusive, I just really appreciate who you are and what you've brought to the board. On that note, do we need to accept a resignation before we move forward? Do we need to have any?
I defer to Director Shields.
When we have a resignation and in writing, and since it was given to all of us as an email and with an effective date, then it's protocol to declare the position vacant based on that date as in the written email, so that the board can then decide how they want to go about filling the vacancy. If we could do that this evening, acknowledging that we are aware that this is coming up, that would allow us to make sure that we are working towards it being an agenda item in our next meeting rather than maybe waiting even longer. So it might be nice to accept the resignation and declare the position vacant.
Okay. Anybody? Yeah.
I move that we accept the resignation of Vice Chair Erica Fuller and declare her position open.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Unanimous once again. Thank you so much, everyone. Any other future agenda items?
One quick announcement.
Oh, please.
There's a Centennial Community Cleanup on October 8th. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, AutoZone on Division.
Can you give a little more details about what, like, is it a group that goes around and cleans up the neighborhood? Are they like collecting garbage from neighborhoods?
Through the Centennial Community Association. It's usually sponsored by Solve. They usually show up and give you the bags and everything, and there's usually a coordinator, and we usually just fan out depending on how many people we have. And last few months ago, we had a really successful cleanup.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Will that be posted on our social media and our calendar on the website?
I need Director Harden to call the game. And Mr. Miller might, Principal Miller might like you to watch the game.
If you are so inclined, I would be pretty sure that our lovely athletic director would be interested in finding people to hold the orange posts or move the little thingies on, anybody interested in volunteering, I'm sure that would be welcome as well.
I love tailgate when I was. What time does the tailgate, as the announcer, what time does the tailgate?
Tailgate starts at 5:30.
5:30 is the tailgate.
So the parade will be over by the time.
The parade's done and basically all that stuff opens up.
Okay, perfect.
And then the game starts
Yeah,
at?
so buy something at tailgate.
Right.
Yes, but it starts at 5:30, so after the parade, you can go check out the tailgate and
Yep.
then stay to watch the game as we beat my brother and
That's right, that's right. We have.
That's all that matters.
We have the celebrate.
And for the tailgate, I'd recommend bringing cash, because not all places will take cards.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yes, these are all student clubs.
Awesome.
And then there's also a lot of community resources
Yep.
there. And so we have several different tables that will be out.
I'm really excited.
I'm excited.
Is there anywhere to like donate, or say specifically, like say to the stadium fund or something like that?
Ooh. That's good thought.
That's an awfully short timeline.
It is an awfully short time. Yeah. Director Shields, did you have something?
Just along those lines, and it's something you said while we were like hanging out someplace at some point in time. When we've been talking about additional community use, right, of our facilities, and in particular, our thoughts about how we can engage our students in more athletics. We did have the Ideal Athletic Committee, and I know that that's morphed in some way. But the idea of having an umbrella organization for the district, which encompasses all of these places, right? Our soccer, our baseball, our volleyball, our football. I could be missing something, I'm not sure. We were talking about trying to find people to do the work that needs to be done, and there seems to be fewer people. And if there was an umbrella organization that people could pool their time, mostly their time, as well as their resources, it seems like that's something we'd want to facilitate or help with. And I know that it was an idea that you were talking about, and I thought that just makes a whole lot of sense. I'm just not sure how we could help facilitate that. And I know that we were cautioned in our board retreat that we take up things that are board-related. But it does feel board-related because of our commitment to engaging with the community. And that's a large group of people to engage with. So however you see or have had discussions with, that might be a future agenda item, but maybe it's way out there. I just wanted to get it on our radar screen.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Director Shields. That is definitely something that I have seen as a need in our community as I have been involved with, not the school-sanctioned athletics, but the Little League or the Centennial Youth Football Association. CBA was another one that I know struggled, and I know that there's high turnover in those boards. It's the same people who are burnt out, and my vision really is one where if we can have one organization or one board that is responsible for the fundraising for all of them, right? So that there's not 3 individual groups or however many individual groups out there replicating the work, the same parents replicating that work. I really think that it would help engage more families in the process. I have, I've definitely have some big visions about that, and it's something that even as we talk about how are we engaging our community in helping us fundraise for the different things that we want that are above and beyond as we're building our stadium and those kinds of things. I really see a larger role for us in maybe facilitating some of those conversations. And so right now, one thing that I will share is that I've talked to Superintendent Owens and Director Southerton about putting together some type of presentation over, what we have agreed to fund, what needs to still be funded, and coming up with creative ways to engage the community in that. I haven't been able to make it to one of the Booster Club meetings, but that's high on my list. I'd love to get even on their agenda eventually so that I can present it to them, because I think they would be a great partner as well. Youth sports is definitely one of my passion areas. Again, I just don't always know where to start, but I appreciate you bringing that up. And I do know that there's many people in this room who are really behind Centennial athletics as well, and really want to see us take it to the next level. And so I'm hopeful that we can all work together on figuring all that out. Yeah. Future agenda items?
All right, we have future agenda items. We have the Student Investment Account Annual Progress Report. It's due by October 15th, so Chair Solowski and I will look at whether it goes on the first or second meeting in October. I believe we have an ESSER 3 plan reporting that needs to happen as well, and so we have that flagged. We also have a board member vacancy that we need to address, and so that's on the agenda as well.
And we'll also be circling back with the superintendent evaluation process for this year.
Yes.
All right, everybody, 9:36. Meeting is adjourned.